Welcome to People's Republic with Brian Griffith. We bring you news and analysis from the front lines of the global struggle for social and economic justice. I'm your host, Brian Griffith, and here's what's going down this week in your backyard and across the world. The city of River Oaks, Texas, which is west of Fort Worth, is experiencing an environmental crisis as water pours out of the taps brown. The city is currently planning, at least in theory, to replace the 70-year-old iron pipes. But how do we know the replacement will work? When will it even come? And what will residents do in the meantime? Joining us to talk about all of this and more is Archer St. Hilaire. He is a resident of River Oaks. Thanks, Archer, for joining us.
Oh, hi. It's nice to be here. Talk about these issues.
Yeah, it's we're glad to have you on, and we're having seen the video coming out of a Facebook page for River Oaks. It's really something to see that happening kind of so close to our neck of the woods. So yeah, what is it that's been going on? Can you just kind of give us a rundown of what it is we're looking at here with the water in River Oaks?
All right, so we got these, I'll just give a rundown of when it was established so people can get an idea of how really old our iron, specifically iron water mains, which they don't really use anymore for the obvious reason of rust, So we were established in 1947, right? And yeah, it's all good and all, but our pipes are older. Our water mains are older than our actual city itself. So that's 1938. The years altogether is 70 to 80 something years, somewhere around there. That's how old our pipes are, 70 to 80. Now, the water's coming out red because of the rust top deposits that get in there, from all the water going through, and then there's air going through the lines and stuff, and it's creating like iron oxide stuff, Well, that's being washed into our pipes. Now, there are also theories that it might be the water tower too, but nothing's been confirmed. So that's just in the air, but that's just something that's been talked about around here. And the water's been bad for maybe 13 to 14 years to older. I don't remember. I've been here since I was a kid. So it's been bad since.
Yeah, so it's been, you've had a clear water problem since you were a kid, so at least a good 13 to 15 years. We're talking about a consistent water supply issue to a very large number of people in River Oaks. We're basically told that we don't know what it is that's causing it. It may be the pipes, it may be the water tower. So what kind of studies have been done on this to to determine what the problem is and how to go about fixing it, if anything? Not
very many studies, but there are some separate studies that have been done on iron oxide poisoning, which a few of the residents are worried about because we do live in Texas and all of our water, we bathe in it, we drink it, and we drink a lot of it because most of us around here, we do a hard physical labor because we're all broke, so we're out there building roads and stuff. You got to drink all day. So there are people who are non-alcoholic, non-smokers, non-drug users who are coming down at the age of 45 who have been living here since they were kids themselves, because this is a small town again, who are getting down with like liver issues that are unrelated to anything genetic and getting kidney issues that are unrelated to anything genetic. And it's because of the problem with processing it. And there are also people who I don't doubt, which I've seen the water, like I've been at my friend's house and I see the water and stuff, and there's people who are losing chunks of hair and they're trying to tell us in this state that it's safe to drink. I don't think it's safe to drink. I mean, anybody can look at the water and tell me that it's orange, it's brown, orange, red. It don't need to be drank.
Yeah, no, looking at the water, it is coming out of the taps, at least according to the videos I've seen on Facebook. That is water that is coming out of the taps brown. It's straight up. It is brown, tainted water. And it looks like city officials have kind of described it as an aesthetic issue. Yeah,
I have a few things to say about them.
So how is the city been handling this? Because again, it does seem like there's in many ways this reminds me of Flint, Michigan. It looks to be something of that kind of magnitude in terms of how bad the water is. So yeah, what are city officials doing, or what are they saying about the water, and how is local news handling this?
Local news is basically trying to create damage control for the rage of the people in this town, because we're pretty enraged. And they've been basically saying that the water is safe to drink, right? It's safe to bathe in. It's safe to drink, eat, to bake with your food. They say it's safe, even though, our vegetables come out looking a little bit black, but okay. They're basically saying that they're going to try to start construction at some point at a very unaffirmed date. And they're trying to say that Herman's been fighting for years to get the funding to pay for our water, which in itself is an issue, because if he had to actually fight to get this issue underhand, then that means that the state itself is ignoring a small town. So that's also its own little problem, So they're not really doing anything. They say they're going to do something, but I'm just telling you right now, somebody who looks at these, who walks these streets, who lives in this town, I ain't seen no construction except for on the sewers. I ain't seen no construction on the water pipes. I ain't seen no construction on the water mains. And they try to act like it's because of traffic. They're concerned about the traffic circle. They're concerned about the main road. I understand, because small businesses are there and stuff, but at the same time, those small businesses cannot run without clean water.
According to local news, according to the Star Telegram report that came out in August of last year, it said at that point that quote unquote help is on the way, but not until October, was coming from the article, that apparently construction on 50,000 feet of old and rusting galvanized iron pipe, which is an estimated 70 years old, would be beginning. That construction would be beginning in October of 2017. Here it is now, October of 2018, and you're saying that apparently just nothing whatsoever, other than some working on the sewers, which seems like the wrong end of the water to be working on to me.
Yeah, they're over by, and we got quite a bit of daycares around here too. I'm just throwing that out there. We got daycares, we got schools. Yeah, this ain't just no small town with cows in it. Okay, we got children here.
Yeah, so
that's why I'm mad.
Yeah. So what kind of a town, is River Oaks exactly? What's the kind of makeup of, the class makeup, the, general sort of community of River Oaks?
We're made up mostly of really, really, really broke people. I mean, we got a lot of historic houses and stuff. I mean, a lot of our places are falling apart. We're the in-between of what's the Dark District and basically North Side, which is seen as not necessarily the most desirable place to be. But we don't have bars on our windows here. Not really. I mean, there are a few of them, but not really. So we're not on that level of bars on the windows, but we're somewhere in between there. Everybody here is working class people. There's, right now, I'm in a trailer park right now. This is where I live. So, I mean, we got a bunch of these around here, and we're made up mostly of the Hispanic community and, just broke people, immigrants, refugees, such, we're just the in-between of the straight up, super poverty-stricken area where people are living in shacks and the nice gentrified area of Fort Worth.
Yeah, and you said that there's also the way the two water systems are, kind of intertwined at different points in River Oaks. Can you kind of explain the layout? Because you said you have clean water, but some of your neighbors do not, based on different kind of water systems in River Oaks.
Yeah. All right. So basically, it's in Sleepy Hollow, people have, I think, around Fort Worth water, right? And then over by the AutoZone, which is a short walk, maybe 10-minute walk if you're being leisurely, they got the rusty water, right? And it's because they're closer to the water tower than we are. So that's why we get extended by the Fort Worth water, because if you keep on going, you start to see that my house, around where I live, you keep walking and you start to see the houses get nicer, and then you're in the Fort Worth area. Because you can literally be at the beginning of the trailer park, and then you cross the street, right? Cross street, because it stops. I know it stops over by the high school, because that's where you get River Oaks water. It's not the high school, the new elementary school, sorry. And the high school get River Oaks water, whereas I get Fort Worth water. But that's how I remember it when I was younger, having them being like, don't drink the water at the water fountain. No.
Yeah, no, they've known it for a while. Then, as we've been talking about, this is not a new thing. It's almost even a part of the culture. If people are talking about don't drink the water.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a part of the culture now, where everybody tells their children don't drink the water over your friends, don't drink the water at Sampson Park, because their stuff is slimy-ish, which is a totally different issue that I'm gonna have one of my friends contact somebody to elaborate on, but like, it's become kind of a culture thing, that and don't stay out past dark because of the police.
I was also noticing that it looks like River Oaks has had some recent issues with police brutality in the past couple of years. Can you maybe elaborate on that as well? Because I feel like so many of these issues of environmental justice as well as kind of socio and economic justice are always intertwined, to the point where when you see oppressed, marginalized, and working communities, trying to stand up for themselves is usually where you also see the highest police presence. So is that the case there?
Yep. We had a protest because a student, and there was a video that went viral for about 5 seconds. And it was this video within my old alma mater, which is Castleberry High School. And it was one of the new police, which, of course, I don't know why they have so many school police, but they have school police there. And one of the kids, who is Hispanic, was sitting there, and his parents, I guess, called him up to the front desk to go get pizza. And the teacher's like, no, you can't. And then all it cuts to is like a cop's in the room, and the guy's like, hey, let him go get the pizza or whatever, let him go to his parents. And he slams him on the ground for no reason. He's not resisting. He's not in the cop's face. He's way far away from him, even if he was, honestly, but this is totally unrelated. But he's just far away from him, and then the cop does that, And it was horrific. Honestly, when I saw it, I was like, wow. And there was a small protest, and there was a very large police presence. And the protest consisted mainly of parents and underage kids who were there protesting what they had seen, right? Including some residents who were like, this is not okay. And then we were literally told to leave the property, and we did, because we're afraid of them. Because I have a criminal, and this is unrelated, but I have a criminal record from the age of 16 for jaywalking. That's how bad it is here. You can't, I'm dyslexic, so I have a hard time deciding which way is the right side of the street. You can't walk across the street here. You can't do that. And I was in my own neighborhood when this happened. I was like right by my house on the way home.
So
this happens all the time.
So you have a criminal history for jaywalking, as in they pressed charges against you for jaywalking. It wasn't just a citation.
Yes, I was in jail for about 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
I'm not kidding. Yeah, it was messed up. My mom wanted to get me out, but we're all broke yet again. So that's why our jails are always full. But that's a different issue. It's the same issue, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no.
Like a whole nother thing.
Absolutely. It seems like these things go together so much. And
we were wanting to do a demonstration here, but I don't think we will. I don't think enough people will come because everybody's scared of the cops.
So you don't think there's much of a chance for people to basically protest, given the kind of state of the water supply then?
Not unless we have a lot of people who can basically defend a lot of the residents, because we have to stay here. That's the reason why we haven't done anything, is because we have to live here. We have to go to work here. We have our children going to school here. We don't want to cause no problems with the cops. Cops will follow us home. The cops know where we live. The cops know what we look like. They know what our names are. We live in a population of 7,400 people approximately. And that in itself, that creates an issue for, like, the cops know us, so the cops target us if we've caused them issues in the past.
I feel like whenever we see infrastructure problems start to develop, whenever we see the infrastructure start to deteriorate in this or that community, I feel like that is usually a pretense for gentrification. So usually the city or municipalities, like, what we'll see is they'll let they'll let certain developments like start to deteriorate, whether that's public housing or whether that's the water supply or whatever the case is. They will continue to let that deteriorate until the point where people are forced to move out, at which point the entire thing gets privatized, whether it's the water system gets privatized or otherwise. Then the state or city, the state is in like the kind of theoretical concepts of the state, like the municipality will then move in and essentially like clear that land for the development of this or that very large development company. So essentially it's a racket. We see that same thing with schools. I always want to point out where schools fail by design. It's not that public schools have failed because they just suck. It's that public schools are designed to fail so that then they can be privatized, so that then that money can be spent to private corporations. And that, I feel like that's an example people see more, along with like, bus routes or whatnot. So I wonder, do you think that the long-term infrastructure problems, this kind of 13 or 15 year this water problem that River Oaks has had, do you think that's one of the ways that that either River Oaks, Fort Worth, or possibly other entities are trying to lay the groundwork for that area to be gentrified, or is that not the case?
Yes, in a way, yes. I mean, like the water, maybe not so much, but other things such as public housing. I mean, like all of our houses are falling apart. Like, it's sad. Like, I know I'm smiling because I think it's humorous because I live in this, but because it's kind of funny when you live in it. But it's messed up. People lose their houses on the regular. I mean, like my friend, for example, which I'm not going to name, she lost her house to the city because of some foundation issues, which they couldn't afford to fix. And because of that, they have then in turn tried to develop that area. And by doing that, they've raised the rent, which is pushing all of us out. And they're trying to develop because all these small businesses are failing because the cops like to sit outside of them. That's also a thing. I do believe the police have a hand in our gentrification because they sat outside of our Whataburger, which was the only thing that really brought anybody to River Oaks, honestly, besides having to drive through it. Nobody likes to drive through here who lives near here. Like people who live in Fort Worth, they know not to drive through River Oaks. These cops will stop you. But, and they like to hang out with like in front of Boulevard Scoops, which also moved, and all these other places that brought people to our town that kept people getting fed because we're all, we work here. We work in this town. A lot of us do. And I do firmly believe that's the reason why we have apartments shooting up on the edge of River Oaks is because they're slowly moving in. Same reason why we now have a dog park over by these expensive giant, cookie dough houses. You know what I'm talking about. Those houses that look like cookie dough that live in their own little private thing. We have those popping up over by the opposite side of the Trinity River, which is where we used to go with our kids at picnics. But now nobody feels safe going there because there's a bunch of middle class people there. And there's security. So nobody feels free walking their dogs there no more. Like this town's getting eaten alive by Fort Worth and by the state itself and how the state can tell us that our water's okay and how the city can continuously steal the housing and the homes from these people who are hardworking people who are like down on their, they're just being downtrodden. It's wrong, and we're sick of it. We're getting really sick of it. But there's nothing really we can do, and that's really defeating in itself. So, yeah, I do believe that it is contributing to gentrification. We have a lot of forces working not in our favor when it comes to that.
We've talked a little bit about the kind of encroaching gentrification. We've talked about that kind of police presence, and you always see that whenever an area is in the middle of being gentrified, it's always a heavy police presence, just generally trying to harass primarily working class black and especially black and brown people around this or that small business or gas station. I saw that here in part of Austin I used to live, that as those god awful boxy earth tone apartments, as I always call them, the kind of new urbanist nonsense.
Gentrification buildings.
Yeah.
Boxes.
And
hate those.
Yeah.
Sadly.
If you're going to steal all our housing, you can at least have good taste. You can at least have a decent aesthetic.
At least make it pretty, so I know that the death looks pretty as it encroaches. Jeez, like a box.
Yeah. So, and it was the same thing. You saw the police presence just police hanging out there, just looking for something as though they needed to kind of find something to do, somebody to harass. I know, I'd like to circle back around in just a minute to this water issue, which seems to be the primary issue with regard to people's health. But
It is.
first, I want to see, is there anything else? Are there any other kind of pressing issues within River Oaks, beyond obviously the police and the gentrification issues, other things that might be contributing to this kind of the kind of problems that people are dealing with?
Lack of employment. I know that's like really not super important compared to these issues, but people are losing their businesses, and which contributes to the gentrification problem is because the city's charging us more for our little businesses, and also the issues we have with like drug use in our community, because we're all we're all poverty stricken. So a lot of people are going to try to take their minds off of their issues, and not to mention that our healthcare problem. Like almost nobody around here I know goes to the doctor until they die, because we're all so broke. And I think this has to do with the gentrification. Like I really deeply do feel like the loss of business has a lot to do with it, because we're having more bigger corporations. Like Walmart moved in, and after we got a Walmart and we lost our Super Save and we lost our Brahms and stuff, people started losing their jobs, and they started moving out, and then they started putting up gentrification buildings that year. So that's something I like to think is also an issue with it, is that people aren't able to find employment around here, because we really aren't. And in the housing crisis, everything is so expensive in River Oaks. Like it's not super expensive, but it's more expensive than everyone's price range. Like trailers around here go for about $2,000 something, like just to move in. And then you have to pay rent, and then you have to pay the lot of the land that you live on and all this stuff. And the same with a lot of people's houses. Like we're paying, and our water costs so much money now. And we need to bring that up in a minute. The price hikes they're bringing up on the 13th for our water. But yeah.
Given all that, let's circle back around and let's really get into like what's going on with the water here. So obviously, for people who are just tuning in or who might have been listening for a little bit, we're talking about the water crisis in River Oaks, Texas, which is very similar in a lot of ways to what has happened in Flint, Michigan. I believe. I think that's a fair comparison, having seen the video of the water coming out brown out of the taps from kind of multiple video sources of people in River Oaks.
Y'all can just check out the group that's called You're from River Oaks When. If you want evidence, this is where we all discuss the issues in our water and the anger that we have towards it. And you can just go there to get any citation you need, including the fact that our mayor has his own separate water tank.
His own separate water tank. Wow.
Yes.
So he doesn't have to exist on either the Fort Worth or the the River Oaks water supply.
Nah.
As of last year, this is coming of August last year, that the city was supposed to replace 50,000 feet of pipe, basically old and rusting galvanized iron pipe that was about 70 to 80 years old. No progress has been made on that yet, as this brown water comes out of these pipes. But in the meantime, let's get into those water hikes, because the price of water is going up even as it's not actually usable water, correct?
Yes. They say it's because they're wanting to flush the pipes, like that's going to help. As if rust doesn't cling to as if it isn't still iron pipes, like it isn't going to rust again. They say they're going to flush our water. So that's why they're going to charge us more. When they flush our water, we can't drink it for a long time. Like this rust isn't just bad in theory for being drinking, but it also carries bacteria, and they will be sending bacteria our way while our price hikes go up. Because they think it's okay to charge us more for water we don't even use.
Yeah, completely unusable water. Do you know, is it a situation where if people don't pay their water bills, are they starting to have their utilities shut off? Has it gotten to that point yet?
Yes, they will evict you, because not telling you the name. Oops, I accidentally slipped a little bit, but ain't nobody gonna know her last name. They were like doing their thing with their house and stuff, and then they decided not to pay the bill anymore on the water. Because why? Why? You know, like she bought bottled water all the time. Like, you know, and we went to the water stations that we have over by Miss Baird's and you know, I forgot Family Dollar, and like that she was going there to get her bathing water anyway. So I don't understand. Anyway, so she stopped paying the thing, and then oh my God, they took her house. Like they took her house. Because they said, well, you aren't paying your utilities, so we're going to inspect it. Oh, the foundation's off. We're taking your home.
So that's clearly what
City of River Oaks, people. City of River Oaks, y'all.
So that's clearly what it is. It is a land grab. Then it's the water,
but land grab.
Wow.
And they're also poisoning the Trinity River too. Our Trinity River, we got three-eyed gator gars sometimes. Our gator gars come out all deformed. The water, I don't even let my dogs swim in the water of the river.
Yeah,
and it's right over by my house.
What was it that poisoned the river, do you think?
It's clearly, I think it's probably the water and or electric plant, because they pour their waste into the inspiration point with the pollution. Where the pollution's coming from is probably, we're not all sure. Because, I mean, most of the residents here are kept in the dark. I had to do a lot of research. I had to have other people do research from out of state. Like I had to check this out, and I still don't know if it's the water plant or if it's the electrical plant that's pouring their wastewater, you know, that's full of chemicals and stuff into the river, because they pour it in through Inspiration Point, which is like, I'm not gonna lie, where everybody swam as a kid because we didn't know any better, but it's just so bad. They've poisoned the rivers, and nobody's allowed to fish around here. Nobody's allowed to do nothing. You ain't allowed to do nothing unless you pay for a pool pass to go swim at the community pool, which is usually filthy. Freaking,
yeah,
in our water, everything.
So it's a water issue all around. Then there's issues with the river. There are issues with the actual the water supply, the pipes and whatnot.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's just generally not access to water within this communities. I was reading that I guess someone is one resident reported spending $90 a month on bottled water. So essentially, that's an entire second water bill, an expensive second water bill that people are paying just to have drinking water.
Yeah, that don't even count baths or washing your hands.
Yeah, so how do most people adapt to this? What are most people doing, considering they don't have a clean water supply?
Well, when you go to Walmart, you'll see that we almost never have baby wipes. So that's gross. I know it's nasty, but it's the truth. And you always see lines up at the water stations, which I didn't see one today. I guess it's because people are just asking their Fort Worth neighbors if they can have some water, which I've let a few people fill up their water here. And that's basically how people bathe. They ask their neighbors, or they go to the pay for water stations where it's like $1 something a gallon, and where you can fill up your water and get your ice. We have like 3 of those, and if that doesn't speak volumes to how bad our water is here, to where we have to have water stations. Like, I ain't ever seen so many water stations ever, and we live in a small town of 7,400 approximately. Like, we shouldn't have that many water things unless, of course, we're being poisoned. And like the fact that the city, the state, it refuses to acknowledge, because of the water issues, it's just they deny that we're being poisoned. We're being systematically poisoned by rust water, which can carry like bacteria and stuff. And it's so bad for the people. Like, people are losing hair, as I've said before. People are coming down with illnesses, which the state says has absolutely nothing to do with our water, but that makes no sense if you're a healthy person and you don't do alcohol, you don't do drugs, you don't even smoke cigarettes, and you have no history of liver issues in your family, and you all of a sudden come down with some weird liver problem. And on a personal note, when I was a kid, my sister came down with cancer around the same time, along with a lot of other people, which I know has not been proven. I know it's not been proven. But a lot of people came down with cancer around the same time. And my sister was actually asked by the Cook Children's to wear a monitor while she drank the water. and went around our power plants and stuff to figure out if the cause could be environmental. And me and my mother, we never got the results of it back. And we often talk about that to this day. My sister, of course, she survived. So, that's good. But that's basically the issue.
Yeah, that's absolutely such a devastating thing to have to deal with, even just the,
yeah.
Because clearly that's not a thing that, whether it's been proven or not, we can recognize patterns. We can recognize when there's clearly an issue.
Yeah.
And you would think that given, say, a pattern like that, given sort of illnesses or whatnot, of any sort, especially something as serious as cancer, that the entire city or the entire state even would be able to mobilize and do something, like put a lot of money toward what is the source of this, even if they don't think it is the water, which clearly the water is a factor. You would think there would be a lot more resources put to figuring out what's going on.
I know. They don't care, there ain't nothing else to say about it. Like, we know they ain't care no more.
Yeah. So
because we're forgotten.
I'm noticing a lot of people who are talking about either running for city council or running for mayor on the Facebook page where this story started to emerge. Are there people who are taking this seriously, who you feel that that might actually be able to fight on behalf of the town, or do you think it's all grandstanding, or is it somewhere in between, or what do you think the case is there with people trying to fight electorally?
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in between because, like a lot of people around here, we still, well, not me, but a lot of people around here still have faith in the system because, we live in the South and that's the way we were taught. And we were taught to trust those in power for some reason. And that's why I think a lot of people are rallying behind these candidates and stuff who are going to come forward. But I personally do not think any of us will see any change unless it is someone who lives here, who has been drinking the water, who is a good person. Until then, we won't see any change. And even so, I don't think the state would even help us out if we did have a good person. So in a way, we're kind of stranded. Even if we do something, even if we do get a good person in there, it's not going to work. I'm kind of sure it's not. I hope it will. I mean, of course, because I want this water gone. I mean, I'll let anybody get rid of the water. I mean, it's terrifying, but it really is. I can't imagine if I lived just a few houses down. If my mother didn't look at the Fort Worth, water, if she didn't decide to move exactly here when I was younger after my sister got diagnosed, I would be drinking that water. I would be bathing in that water my whole life, even though I did when I was in school. I drank it in high school and stuff, but that's what's so scary about it is because I don't think anything's going to change, and there are going to be children who are going to grow up drinking this. And that's what's scary. And that's why I don't know if anybody's going to do anything. So I'm kind of on the fence about that. I hope they're going to change it, but I don't see it.
As so many people become more political in various ways, we've seen a shift in political consciousness over the past couple of years. I think people need to be thinking about what the best forms of political action are, and that's not always electoral. Oh,
no.
So sometimes there are electoral gains to be made, but very often, in the vast majority of cases, unless you have kind of an independent structure of the workers and the marginalized and the oppressed that can act outside of the two major political parties, I don't think we'll see much change until that structure is built. But I see positive signs nationwide, and I hope there's a kind of positive sign there where people do get fed up with it and are willing, hopefully to fight collectively for the change they want. So we'll hopefully that's the case. And, I appreciate all the kind of thoughts and the analysis here of what's been going on. So for those people who are just tuning in, once again, we're talking about the city of River Oaks, Texas, which is west of Fort Worth. And the city of River Oaks is experiencing an environmental crisis right now because water is pouring out of the taps brown. You can see the proof of this on the, when you're, sorry, what's the name of the Facebook page?
Well, you're from River Oaks when, and then ... because I don't know.
Yeah.
They just made it that way.
Yeah.
And they're always like, you're from River Oaks when you drink poison water.
We'll post a link to some of the water coming out of River Oaks on our Facebook and Twitter. And we've been speaking to Archer St. Hilaire. He is a resident of River Oaks who has joined us for this conversation about the water supply there. Thank you, Archer, very much for coming on.
It's no problem. I just want to get it out there so that something might change, because it's bad, and something needs to be done, because people bathing their kids in this. I know I keep saying that, but I can't stress it enough that people are bathing their children in this water. Children are drinking this water, and I can't imagine what it'll do to them when they grow up. That's what I'm scared about.
Yeah, people need to know about this, but it's not enough just to know. People need to get involved.
Yes, they do.
To show solidarity with real sort of action behind that. So anyone, how would you suggest people get involved? Are there ways to support the community of River Oaks right now, or is that still developing?
Yeah. There are a few ways. Me and some of my friends who live around here, who I've known since we were kids. Andy, stop attacking your mom. All right, since we were kids, we known each other, and we're thinking about doing a water drive for certain residents who must drink, like water, obviously, since they're living. But wow, that came out really weird. But,
yeah.
We're trying to start a water drive. So if anybody would like to bring any water by, I will contact you with the details, because we're currently trying to set up a nonpartisan area for us to meet at, to where no creeps or anything, because you never know, people are creeps and such. So we're going to try to set up a place where people can put their water there and donate, big things of water, like water either from their homes or from bought from the store, so that we can pass it out to people we know who really need it, including the very, 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 very large homeless population of River Oaks. I also worry about them, because I know that some of them end up drinking out of the river on hot days when they ain't got no other water. And that's also scary. So that's something we need to focus on. It's just if anybody can, bring some water. And if anybody's up for demonstrations, contact me on Facebook. My name is the same as it is on here. So you could just contact me, just message me, and I'll accept your request, and then we can work something out. Because I am afraid of the police, but I am more afraid of letting this happen. I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to make some sort of ruckus, to where they know that we aren't going to take this anymore, because we aren't going to take it anymore. We're sick of drinking poison.
Yeah, really, really powerful stuff, and I'll continue to keep people updated. We'll post it. We'll post updates to Facebook. We'll post updates to Twitter, and we'll report updates here on the show as they happen. We've been talking again with Archer St. Hilaire, resident of River Oaks, Texas, on the water supply there. So thanks again for coming on.
Hey, no, thank you.
Dallas Police Chief Renee Hall has refused to fire police officer Amber Geiger, even as Geiger faces manslaughter charges for shooting Botham Jean in his own apartment on September 6th. Meanwhile, community outrage continues to grow as Dallas PD fails to get their story straight. What will it take to get justice for Botham Jean? Joining us to talk about this and much more is Marissa Rodriguez, who's a community organizer who's been involved in the Justice for Botham movement in Dallas. Thank you, Marissa, for coming on the show.
Hey, yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's start with the actual shooting incident itself on September 6th. There's a lot of conflicting stories that have been going around. What do we know so far about the way this shooting transpired? What details have we been able to pin down? And what are some of the discrepancies with the police department and the facts that have come out?
Right. So unfortunately, the public's understanding of what happened on September 6th around 9 p.m. is largely built on the affidavit that Amber Geiger, the police who actually committed the murder, so our story is basically built on her story. And we know from what the affidavit states, that there are many inconsistencies, some of which are just blatantly lies. For example, she said that she was fumbling with the key. That was sort of the reason that we know that that's not true is because neighbors report hearing police talk, is the way that the neighbors put it. Stuff like, let me in, open up, Dallas police. So these sort of verbal commands that, she does allude to in her affidavit that just sort of, contradict the idea that she was mistakenly entering this apartment. That's like the first kind of glaring piece of information that just doesn't make sense. If she thought she was at her own apartment, she was struggling with the key, trying to get in because it was the wrong door, why then would she be, making a lot of noise, according to what the neighbor said, and saying things like, let me in, open up. That just kind of right there doesn't add up. From what we understand and what we can kind of extrapolate, just as the public wanting answers and following the case, it seems very evident that Amber Geiger murdered this man. She entered his apartment by forcing her way in, demanding that he open the door, and when he did, she shot him. Early crime scene evidence suggests that it was actually maybe a 10 to 12 foot distance. So she actually shot him sort of in the length of the room itself, and not necessarily in the doorway as we've sort of been imagining this. So there are some glaring inconsistencies with the story, just right from the beginning.
Yeah, the fact that the door has been reported to have either been closed or ajar, the fact that it appears the apartment had an automatic door locking mechanism that would contradict the story being put forth. There are definitely so many unknowns, and it seems from what I've seen that Dallas police have been very, very tight-lipped, not just on the story itself, not just on the actual details of the day of the shooting, but they've also been tight-lipped on Amber Geiger's whereabouts, her status with the police department. They were originally at one point saying that they did not know where she was after the shooting,
right.
Which seems to be very likely a falsehood to me.
Right. Yeah, it was hard for me to watch that interview with Chief Renee Hall. This was just some hours really after the events transpired. It was hard for me to watch that and hear her say the words, "We don't know where she is," and for me to just accept that as a matter of course. Like, that doesn't seem like that would be true at all. If you or me or anyone else had committed such a heinous act of murder, like, that would absolutely not be the case. Everyone would know exactly where we were. We would be in the jail. We would be in behind bars. Like, that just doesn't make any sense at all.
And of course, she is not behind bars at this point. She was charged with manslaughter, which many seem to be saying is a way to avoid murder charges or whatnot. It seems like manslaughter has a different sort of implication than murder does, and is definitely a lighter kind of charge. But then the fact that she was essentially out on bail, what was it, within hours or so, while many of the people who have been protesting, there's the Dallas Nine that I hope to get into a little bit later in this interview, that have been sitting in jail for some time for what appears to be no other crime than having protested this killer cop. Let's first talk about what the kind of responses by the community have been since then. What were sort of the early responses after this story came to light? What was the kind of feeling in the community, and what transpired with that?
Yeah, absolutely. There were, this information spread very quickly, of course, in the days and the next hours following this happened in the evening, and then sort of the next day, pretty soon after waking up, people were sharing this information. And the I mean, there was just sort of this incredulous response, like, how could this happen? How did this happen? And in the early days, in the first couple of days, I believe it took 2 or maybe even 3 days. We didn't even know the name or the identity. We just knew that it was a woman cop. So it was just such a weird, it had a very strange feeling. From the very beginning, something just felt off about this situation. So a cop entered the wrong apartment. Like, nobody could really kind of wrap their minds around that detail, which is how it's been described over and over again. So, like, even just from that headline itself, that short tagline of cop enters wrong apartment, kills man, it just doesn't make any sense. So people were justifiably angry, very upset, and very frustrated that this is happening again and again and again. I attended the vigil that took place on the 7th. It was a vigil that was hosted and headed off by a grassroots organization here in Dallas called Mothers Against Police Brutality, and they do excellent work. They've been community organizing for about 5 years or so after one of the founders lost a son to police here in Dallas. His name was Clinton Allen. So they held the vigil, and Lee Merritt spoke. Lee Merritt is the attorney for the Jean family on this case. He spoke, and he told us about O'Shea Terry, who had been killed by Arlington police just days before this. But it was like, he said that he got one phone call to represent this family, the Terry family, and then was essentially landing in Dallas from visiting family elsewhere with the Terry family, and he gets another phone call, and it's, there's been another police murder of a black man in Dallas. I mean, it was just back to back, and it's hard for the community to even catch its breath. All of this comes 1 week after the sentencing of Roy Oliver, who killed 15-year-old Jordan Edwards in Balk Springs, Texas, which is just in the south, I believe it's the southeast corner of Dallas. So, I mean, it's like community can't get its breath. It can't catch its breath. It's not allowed to heal from one, traumatic event before there are yet others, just blowing up the headlines. And it's awful. It feels terrible.
What exactly has the atmosphere been like with regard to especially black communities in Dallas and other kind of marginalized populations? Like, what is the relationship to the police department, especially given that there is a police chief who is a black woman? How does that kind of factor into this?
Yeah, it's actually it's an interesting, to say the least, set of circumstances. Chief Renee Hall, if I'm correct, came from Chicago, where there is, reportedly just killings in black communities, but just shootings kind of constantly on a constant basis. It's just kind of a way of life there almost. So Chief Renee Hall comes to Dallas, and these are the things that are put on her plate, and seeing how she has responded in the wake of these events, it's very disappointing as a Dallas community member to see the chief of police essentially pass the buck. The case was transferred to the Texas Rangers immediately because initially it was reported as an officer-involved shooting, which would have meant that when an officer is actually on duty and in the field and a shooting occurs, that's an officer-involved shooting. Well, initially this case had been reported as such, but when it became clear and evident that that's actually not exactly what had happened, that's when DPD and Chief Renee Hall made the decision to pass the case along to the Texas Rangers. And the Texas Rangers have been even more tight-lipped than the DPD. The DPD are actually who is responsible for leaking the information that there was supposedly some marijuana found in Botham's apartment on the day of his funeral, no less. So that's the source of that information was reportedly DPD, unnamed DPD members. So, you know, the Texas Rangers have been very tight-lipped. They have not revealed any toxicology results from the blood that was drawn supposedly from Amber the night of the crime. You know, again, there was a very quiet, you know, protection of her name, even just in the days following. If it wasn't for Attorney Lee Merritt, we would have not, I don't know how long it would have taken any of the officials at any level involved in this case to have revealed that information. I mean, who knows? We may not have it still if it weren't for Attorney Lee Merritt sort of giving that information to the public here in Dallas. And people are highly distrustful. If they weren't already distrustful of DPD and of the Dallas Police, you know, Association and any sort of arm of what's happening, the DA's office, the Texas Rangers, the mayor's office, you know, they certainly are distrustful now.
It's becoming obvious that we have such a societal problem here. And I think this case more than anything reveals the kind of double standards and the hypocrisy, absolute hypocrisy on its face of these police departments who will say such things as, you know, we can't release any of the details of this shooting while it's ongoing, but they certainly didn't have any problem releasing the detail that so much of the local media latched onto, that Botham Jean had a small amount of marijuana in his apartment, the one that Amber Geiger, it seems that Amber Geiger broke into his apartment and shot him. In one way or another, she broke into his apartment and shot him. Whether or not he has marijuana, whether or not he has anything, no matter what sort of person he is, it should not matter. Really, it's so laughable on its face, in its face, and I think more people are seeing it that now that, you know, again, I don't want to pin this on social media because I think there are also societal problems that are coming to light. But now that there are so many, now that information travels faster, I think people are seeing it in larger amounts. So what, you know, talking about the protests, what sort of protests are we seeing out there? Yeah, what is the general feel that, like, what would justice look like if in this case?
Yeah, so communities here have been demanding, there's a tagline that sort of has sprung up from these events, and it's, can we get justice in our living room? You know, understandably, if you leave your home, if you go out into the world, if you encounter these white supremacist institutions who are basically predicated on shoot first, ask questions later, as evidenced by the 900 plus cop killings of citizens a year in the United States. And reportedly, this year is what already is going to surpass that. And we still have, you know, a handful of months left in the year. So people are demanding justice for Botham, justice for O'Shea, justice for Botham, meaning that Amber Geiger would be, first of all, fired by the police department, as she is still on their payroll, which is just, I mean, I don't think that you or I could shoot somebody and have a job the next day. I don't think that that's how that normally works. So Amber Geiger would be fired. She would be charged with murder, as opposed to manslaughter, which is, as you mentioned earlier, it is manslaughter is a slightly lighter charge. She would be imprisoned. She would be sent to jail. And also the media would need to, justice would be the media apologizing very formally to the Jean family for distributing the information that was leaked to them about this supposed small amount of marijuana on the day that he was laid to rest, no less. Which is, as Lee Merritt put it, the highest form of disrespect. Protests here have been ongoing. There's been protests almost every other day. I know that family members and friends of mine, I mean, it's almost like are you going to go protest today? I mean, it's like every other day, which is an excellent indicator that the consciousness of Dallas is growing, and the consciousness of the world. I mean, the United States is this is a very, very well-known case across the U.S. Everybody is sort of watching what Dallas is doing. Attorney Lee Merritt hosted they headed off a protest on Sunday. This was held at the AT&T Stadium. So there was a game going on. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. It was a pop-up protest. So he put the word out on Facebook in the morning, and trusted the community to show up with very little information other than we're going to demand justice for both of them, but we're going to do it in a way that it's going to be sort of a secret at first. So at 4 p.m., community members gathered at a Friendship West Church in South Dallas. And Lee Merritt divulged the details of what we were going to do. They had prepared buses for us to transport us from Dallas to Arlington. They had also 2 coffins. So the 2 coffins were not only significant in demonstrating, the life of Botham and the life of O'Shea, but also meant to demonstrate first they kill your body and then they kill your name. So there was quite a bit of significance in the coffins. So we were the designated mourners. So we were bussed out to the stadium, and we marched essentially from the parking lot right up to the center there at the stadium. Media was present, and these are the events that actually led up to the arrest of the Dallas Nine. So the Dallas Nine were 9 protesters who led their own sort of spontaneous protest. Our protest that had been planned was meant to be more mournful and more, there was going to be sort of an element of drama and really kind of demonstrate very clearly some of the effects that the community was feeling with the presence of 2 coffins. The Dallas Nine had it in their hearts and in their spirits to continue protesting more loudly. So they did that, and they initially broke away from us, and they continued on and demanding justice for both of them, justice for O'Shea, no justice, no peace. And they were swiftly arrested by Arlington Police Department, who is the same police department that killed O'Shea Terry. And they've not yet, to my understanding, there's been no justice for the Terry family either. So the Dallas Nine were held in jail for 2 nights. Bond was not being posted at all. There were definitely funds waiting for them, as the community here were very swift and responsive to, gathering the necessary funds and having that money ready to go. But the bond itself just wasn't posted.
That's all we have for this week. You have been listening to People's Republic with Brian Griffith. You can find our show on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher by typing in People's Republic. Or you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at People's Radio ATX for more news and analysis. Thank you for listening as we report on the global struggle for social and economic justice. We are out of here.